Hello, everyone, and it is now time to kickstart our first session for NexTech Southeast Asia HR Summit 2021, the opening keynote by Josh Bersin on the topic, Employee Experience for a High-Tech, High-Touch Work World. In this insightful keynote, Josh will share findings from the recently published research on employee experience, a key factor to successfully adapting to new business and workforce challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. His presentation will touch on the practices found to have the greatest impact on business, employees, and innovation. He will also discuss how to operationalize EX teams for success, the steps companies can take to move to higher levels of EX maturity, and the types of technologies that can support EX excellence. Josh is a global industry analyst and CEO at the Josh Bersin Company. An industry analyst, researcher, educator, and technology analyst, Josh has covered all aspects of corporate HR, training, talent management, recruiting, leadership, and workplace technology. He's also the founder of Bersin & Associates, which is now known as Bersin by Deloitte. A keynote speaker, he advises HR teams and vendors in the HR space, and also serves as an educator, thought leader, and personal coach to HR and business leaders around the world. His professional goal is to make work-life better around the world by helping HR professionals and teams learn, stay informed, and develop deep expertise on world-leading practices that help their companies formulate leadership strategies and workplace technology solutions. Bersin spends his time studying the world of work, HR, and all aspects of workplace technology. So without any further delay, let me invite Josh to deliver his opening keynote address. Over to you, Josh.
Hello, everyone. This is Josh Bersin. I'm going to talk for the next 20 or 25 minutes about employee experience and all of the things going on in the world of work, HR, and technology to make work better for employees. And of course, you can't really talk about employee experience without talking about the pandemic. And the pandemic, as disruptive as it has been, is really a small interruption in a 13-year journey we've been on since the 2008 recession, which is to digitize everything going on in our lives. And in many ways, the pandemic accelerated many of the investments we were already making and many of the issues we were already facing. If you remember back in 2016, at least I certainly do, I wrote an article called The Overwhelmed Employee. So employees were overwhelmed long before we had this pandemic here. And it has been a steady process of figuring out how to digitize work and automate things and make lives, work life better for people and accommodate, new models of work, much more hybrid experiences in the workplace as well as at home, working in teams, people working on multiple jobs at the same time, older people and younger people in the workforce at the same time, dealing with highly diverse workforces of people from all over the world, regardless of the size of the company. You don't have to be a big company to be global anymore. And of course, the need to continuously develop ourselves, develop people, and support people and create a resilient environment at work where people can perform and feel good about their work and their companies without getting burned out. And, EX is an even more important topic now. If you look in the United States, I know a lot of you are in India, but in most places of the world, the economy is growing explosively coming out of the pandemic. And we're really above the rate of growth we were before the pandemic. There's almost 40% more jobs open in the United States now than there were a year ago, about 14 million. And the unemployment rate is dropping. We just had a slight interruption in this, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect the United States to go down to 4% unemployment again. People are coming back into the workforce. A lot of people left the workforce, but they're coming back. So the labor participation rate is going up, and employers are really finding that as a critical issue. When you cannot hire people, things change a lot. I mean, a lot of companies are telling me they're posting jobs on various job boards and they're getting no applicants at all, or people are just not showing up for the jobs that they accepted because they got another opportunity somewhere for more money. So employee experience is a business critical issue. It's no longer just an issue for the HR department. It's really the issue for the CEO, because if people don't stay, you're not going to be able to keep up with the economic growth and the opportunities that your company faces. Now, the other thing that's been huge in terms of EX is the massive growth in internal mobility. This data shows that amongst the 7 largest companies in these industries, a very high percentage of them are either recruiting internal people for positions or what we call silver medal candidates, people who have applied in the past, but maybe weren't hired for some reason. And what that also has created as part of the EX strategy is the need to facilitate and streamline and improve internal mobility. Now, we used to talk about this in the past, and I did a lot of research on it in the early 2000s. And it was really kind of a nice idea, but certainly not a strategy. It was more of a succession management process. But now it's really common. 25 to 30% of Americans changed employers or roles or professions. In healthcare, roughly 40% of nurses decided they wanted to change their entire profession. So it's very common for employees to want to change roles inside of your company. And if you can't give them those opportunities, that's going to really impact their employee experience. And they may just leave and take a job somewhere else. So what's going on in general is really all 8 of these things have hit at the same time. And while employee experience is kind of sitting there in the middle, as you can see, it really is related to the job market, the external labor market, the need to handle more contingent and contract work amongst many roles, improve internal mobility, better develop young people, better develop leaders, and improve the skills and capabilities and careers of everybody in the company in a more agile job architecture. Now, the EX space itself has its own kind of domain. So let me talk a little bit about that. Now, the first thing you have to reflect on is that, depending on what industry you're in, it feels a little bit different, but virtually every industry is becoming a service industry. We talked a lot about automation removing and eliminating jobs, back around, 6 or 7 years ago. That didn't happen. We created jobs. For every piece of automation, another job is created that's a slightly more complex or hybrid or intellectual powered job. 90% of the jobs in the United States are service jobs. And the pandemic has created an unprecedented level of burnout. And this isn't just among white collar workers. 70% of the workers around the world do not have a desk, and they're facing many of the same issues of those of us that do have a desk. Many long hours, risk, difficult situations with customers or prospects or clients, mask wearing, uncertainty about the virus, changing regulations, and then just general stress because of the always on digital nature at work. And so the reason EX has become so important is that companies have been piling on investment in this area. Roughly 31 to 32% of wages in North America go into non-pay benefits. Most of these are insurance, well-being, external education, healthcare, and vacation, and other benefits that are intended to improve the employee experience. So, that's a lot of money. If you don't spend it in the right place, you might not get the return you want. You might not get the employment brand you want. You might not get the retention you want. Well, one of the things that I think is really important that has entered the conversation about EX is the issue of productivity. Because if there's anything I've learned and seen from the data and the conversations we've had with, hundreds of employees and companies rather this last couple of years, it's that engagement and experience does not create productivity. It's really the other way around. Productivity creates a sense of engagement and empowerment. And so, and that's really what this book is all about, is people, when they come home from work, what they talk about is not how much fun they had and all the people they talked to. They talk about what they accomplished, what they completed, how they helped somebody, how they helped a client or a customer, how they closed a deal. So a lot of EX is about making people productive and simplifying the work experience. And that's really what's been going on in leadership. Leadership philosophies tend to change every 5 to 10 years based on the companies that are exceptionally successful. And right now we're in an era where leaders have to be good listeners and curators of the company brand and trusted advisors and really productivity experts. And that means really using what we call the power skills of leadership: being flexible, respect, giving people a sense of trust and empowerment, forgiving people for making mistakes, giving people the flexibility to come in late or skip a day of work if they're sick, being humble about the changes that are going to go on and adapting quickly. These are really critical part of this. And, if I go back to my, career, which started in 1978, it seems like an awful long time ago now, work used to be about conformity. It used to be about, conforming to the company's policies. And in exchange for that, the company took care of you. Well, now really, it's not really that way anymore. Everybody who comes to work obviously needs to do what the job entails, but they want to be themselves. They want to have their own gender. They want to have their own hairstyle. They want to have their own dress. And so employee experience is now, much more about, as I'll show you in a minute, about belonging and inclusion and respect and psychological safety, things that psychologists probably could have told us 20 years ago were important in any organization or any team. And it's given birth to a whole new domain of leadership, which we call human-centered leadership. And if you're interested in this, we have a whole research paper on it. And we're going to be having a major event and a whole series of activities on human-centered leadership for HR, starting next year in some of our more executive education programs. So let's dive into EX for a minute. EX is really a constant process of addressing Maslow's hierarchy. At the bottom of the hierarchy is everything from safety to tools to technologies to simplicity and self-service. At the top, it's career growth and trust and respect and opportunities for advancement. And if you look at the history of EX, it's been around for a long time. It used to be called industrial engineering, when we used to literally design factories and figure out how much weight people could carry from place to place, and we would measure what people were doing. And then we got into psychology and employee engagement and surveys. And today, we know from the research we've recently done on our side and also with Medallia that the highest performing companies are surveying and listening to employees in many, many ways, very, very frequently. But it's moving to a domain of design where the problem isn't just listening, it's responding, it's reacting, it's designing, it's iterating, it's constantly improving the practices, the policies, the workplace, the tools to make work better. Who could have predicted we'd have the Delta virus back again after all the work we've been through for the last 15 or 18 months? You have to redesign things now in September, October of 2021 that you didn't think about in the summer of 2021. And that's really what this has been all about. We also know that the EX problem is much bigger than HR. I mean, you may feel that your responsibility is to be the head of EX or to own the EX initiative, but there's no way you're going to do it without partnering with IT, with facilities, with legal, and to bring management and leadership into the fold. So, I think EX is becoming a massive, really business strategy for companies. It's an industry of tools and solutions, and it's much bigger than surveys and IO psychologists and engagement tools that we used to have in HR. And one of the things our research found, and I'm going to show you our research in a minute, is that of all the things you do, one of the most important is listening. In the technology part of EX, which I'll share with you in a minute, listening tools are vitally important because you don't know what you don't know. I don't care how big your company is, every individual is facing slightly different issues based on their job, their role, their city, their manager, their personal life. And while you can't make the company individualized for every person, if you're not hearing that information, if you're not listening to it on a regular basis and you don't have tools to understand what those issues are, you're going to have a hard time reacting. And so a big part of EX is really creating response systems. Now, we have a whole white paper on this called shortening the signal, shortening the distance from signal to response. And it's really about how companies can design employee experiences with lots of feedback and then operate your service delivery organizations to make sure that employees are constantly getting better and better solutions at their point of need. And that's really why this has become such a complex area, is it's really, there's a lot of operations involved here, not just, kind of tools and policies coming out of HR. Now, let me talk about the research. We just completed a massive study. It's called Employee Experience, the Definitive Guide. It's available at no charge on our website. It's 100 pages long. It's all sorts of examples and case studies. And what we did is we surveyed almost 1,000 companies on roughly 80 or 90 practices, many of whom are listed here, as well as a lot of technology practices. And then we correlated which ones had the greatest impact on financial performance, human capital performance, and growth and innovation. And if you read through the research, you'll see different things tend to have different outcomes. But generally speaking, the dark yellow areas are by far the #1 drivers. Mission, purpose, trust, transparency, a sense of continuous investment in people, and an environment that is inclusive where people feel they belong. These are issues of trust, of culture, and of management. So as much as we love throwing technology at these problems, that isn't necessarily the most important thing to do. The second most important areas are in the area of growth, job mobility, appreciation, telling people that you recognize what they're doing and that you thank them for the work they're doing, taking good care of managers and leaders so that they know how to be the best they can possibly be, and they understand the issues of stress and mental health and leadership and goal setting, and that people feel connected to their teams. As you know, Google did research on this years ago and found that psychological safety in teams is one of the most important drivers of performance, and that continues to be true, and we found the same thing in this research. We also know that inclusion is a big part of this. Inclusion doesn't mean having a head of DEI and doing inclusive hiring. It means being inclusive in all aspects of your company. In fact, one of the studies we published late last year, really discovered and really unlocks the secrets to creating an inclusive environment. It really has to cross all of the domains of HR and really be a business strategy for you to be and act in an inclusive and fair way, not only with employees, but with customers and stakeholders and supply chain partners and everybody in your community. So that makes a big difference on employee experience as well. So let me just skip ahead and talk a little bit about the tech part of this, because I only had a few minutes. The other thing, of course, that's going on is simplification of tech. And, the reason that I think the economy has been so responsive to the pandemic is we have a lot of great tech. We have Zoom and Teams and Slack and Facebook and Microsoft tools and ServiceNow and Workday and Oracle and SAP, and all of the vendors in HR have really adapted very, very quickly to creating a new generation of tools that really integrate work and life. And I think the big theme in HR has been not building more and more and more HR software, but building intelligent systems that make work easier, not just HR. And what that's involved in terms of EX is a layer of software that is now called the Employee Experience Platform. And I actually came up with that name really almost 2.5 years ago. And at the time, I was doing work with ServiceNow. We were trying to figure out how to position the ServiceNow service delivery platform. And sure enough, it was really, really picking up speed. ServiceNow is now a much bigger company than Workday. They're a massively successful company around the world. And they have all sorts of interesting competitors. Microsoft Viva, for example, is a really, really big play in the whole employee experience area. There's other products in the market as well. And this new generation of tools, which I drew in red, is really sitting on top of the transactional systems that you buy for HR. Now, many of the vendors, in fact, virtually all of the vendors will tell you that their systems will make employee experiences better. And there's no reason why that's not true. But ultimately, if you think about employee experience as a design problem, it isn't just the system, it's how well you can customize it and configure it and create journeys and get data and get information and integrate it into your service delivery organization that really matters. So the EX market has moved out of the world of new cloud platforms for ERP to really employee experience tools on top. And these may be tools like ServiceNow, they may be learning experience platforms, talent mobility systems, talent marketplace applications, as well as this whole new generation of systems that work in the flow of work, apps connected into Microsoft Teams, into Slack, into Salesforce, into Google Workplace. So it's been really kind of interesting, and I'm sure most of you are involved in lots and lots of discussions about that. Now, one final point, because I don't have a lot of time, it also impacts HR. If there's anything that we've learned from this pandemic, is that HR is a very important part of a company. And you and we in HR have to be constantly upgrading and updating ourselves on all of these changes in the economy and the workplace and technology and just the culture of work. And, the big story in EX and also just in the pandemic itself is agility. Every employee experience issue changes. And as much as you might design or build or buy a perfect solution, the minute you implement it, there's something that needs to be changed. And so a lot of what's going on in HR now is cross-functional iterative design. And that means start immediately, implement the solution, and find a tool set and a team that can constantly change and update over time. And that's really been the big change in HR. Now, you can't do that with a whole ERP system. Those things, tend to be a little bit harder to modify, but that is really the theme. In terms of what happens in the HR function itself, I think it's time for everybody in HR to think about themselves as a full stack professional. If you're in recruiting, you need to understand diversity. If you're in diversity, you need to understand pay. If you're in comp, you need to understand well-being. If you're doing well-being, you need to understand leadership development. If you're in leadership development, you need to understand talent mobility. All of these things are related. And so a lot of your successes in EX are going to be your professional expertise and then your ability to train and enable your business partners to be great consultants. And we have an entire program on a masterclass on consulting for HR business partners in our academy that I encourage you to take a look at that will really help your business partners reach that level of capability. We know, by the way, one more point on this, that HR expertise directly results in business performance improvement. We've now done through our HR capability project a whole series of activities with different large companies and proven statistically that the organizations and teams in the company that have the highest quality and highly skilled HR teams have higher levels of retention, higher levels of performance, higher levels of engagement, and better business outcomes. So one of the things I would leave you with is that your job as an HR person is also for you to keep up to date and make sure your skills are keeping up so that you can continuously address this issue. Final thing I'll sort of leave you with is culture. If you go back to the research in the Employee Experience Definitive Guide, the big story in there is that it isn't really a technology problem. EX can be greatly improved with many, many technology tools, but ultimately it's the sense of trust and belonging and safety and psychological safety that makes people happy at work. And so your job and our job in HR really is to be the ombudsman and the coach and really the feedback mechanism for business leaders on building this sense of trust. And I think as we come out of the pandemic, which obviously we're not there yet, this is going to turn out to be a whole new currency of business coupled with ESG and sustainability that will really differentiate companies into the future. Thank you very much for the opportunity to give you this presentation. Please come to joshbersin.com. You can see all sorts of research, understand our membership program, or join our academy if you want to really upskill and connect your HR team to the global world of great advanced employee experience programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Josh, for these incredible insights into employee experience and what it means in this new world of work, and how organizations can create and move to higher levels of EX. Employee experience is not just an employee strategy anymore. Companies with great employee experience simply outperform in every way. When you take care of your employees, they take care of your company. Thank you so much, Josh. It was very insightful and a very engaging session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us once again. We have some engaging sessions planned for you all through the day and a very exciting magic show at the end. So stay with us, experience the sessions, enhance your learning, and wrap up your Friday evening with some fun and frolic. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you in the other sessions today. Thank you.